Thank you, Teresa. I hope everybody can hear me. So thank you, Teresa, for having me in this program. And wonderful to have such a interested and enthusiastic audience. And I know you're enthusiastic, I can see by your expressions. So yes, I'm presently based in New York, in Manhattan, in the Vedanta Society of New York. This is actually the first of the Vedanta societies to be established. Swami Vivekananda came here to the United States to attend the World Parliament of Religions in 1893. And in 1894, he established the Vedanta Society of New York. So this is the ashram where I'm speaking from. Let me start with a short prayer, a chant from the Upanishads, a peace chant. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace. Peace, peace. Today, our door, our path into Advaita Vedanta will be through a text which I'm going to read from. The very ancient text of Advaita Vedanta. For those who do not know, who are not aware of what exactly Advaita Vedanta is, it is a system of non-dual spiritual philosophy, let's put it this way. Which is based on the texts called the Upanishads. So these are very ancient texts, part of the original corpus of the Vedas, the foundational texts of Hinduism, and they date back, they're pre-Buddhistic. These Upanishads go back millennia. And they have been the subject of many commentaries and sub-commentaries and the development of multiple schools of thought and practice in the millennia, the centuries and millennia since in India, among which very well known is the non-dual school or the Advaita Vedanta school, in which the most famous personality is Shankaracharya, who wrote commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, on the Upanishads, on the Brahma Sutras, and so on and so forth. And we are broadly, in part of his broader tradition, we also, in the Ramakrishna order, we belong to that broader tradition with qualifications. And it's all very complicated, but that doesn't concern us now. Now, among the texts, the traditional texts of Advaita Vedanta are the Upanishads and the much more well-known Bhagavad Gita and the much less well-known the Brahma Sutras and a whole range of commentarial and sub-commentarial literature. However, there's always been a parallel Advaita lineage or tradition, let's call it a tradition of Advaita, of other texts which are not directly written by Shankara or his followers, which are older than Shankara and his followers actually, not as old as the Upanishads, but certainly very ancient. Among them is this text which I'm going to draw upon today. The text is called the Yoga Vasistha, which means the yogic teachings of the Rishi, of the sage Vasistha. Vasishtha is a well-known sage in Indian stories, ancient stories. He is there in the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata, and many other texts. The story goes that, the background for the text, the story goes that in ancient times, in times of yore, in the age of Rama, the young prince Rama reads, studies Vedanta, the non-dual philosophy, and decides to renounce the world and in search for enlightenment, naturally to the annoyance of his father, the king Dasharatha, who feels that, so if the prince goes away and becomes a monk, who's going to become the next king, and so on and so forth. So he engages the great sage Vasishtha. Can you talk some sense into this young man? He wants to give up a kingdom and be a monk and go off into the forests or mountains to search for Brahman, the ultimate reality, or what have you. So the sage Vasishtha goes to the prince Rama and he says, I hear you've been studying and you want to become enlightened. You want to become a monk, go off into the forest, give up your kingdom. All that's very good. But may I ask you a question? The question is, that ultimate reality, that non-dual reality which you are looking for, uh, is this kingdom and this world other than that? And by the very logic of the question, if there is a non-dual reality, the ultimate reality is non-dual, which means there is no second thing apart from it, then obviously this world which you are trying to give up, going to go away into the forests or mountains and not be a prince or a king, this world, its people, its activities, and yes, its troubles and struggles, are they a separate reality? This is a great question, actually, that are there really two worlds, a spiritual world and a secular world? Uh, Are there really two worlds, a heaven and a earth? Non-duality would imply there are not two, literally, not two. So why give up this world, Rama, in your search for enlightenment? How about you become enlightened right here and now? That's a difficult proposition, a proposal to turn down. So starts the dialogue between the sage Vasistha and Rama. And right here, we see that it is relevant to us because how many of us become monks in the Himalayas or become hermits or backpackers in India? uh, People have lives, have jobs, and they're constrained by relationships, by economic reasons, by health reasons, so many things. You can't really step away from the world. Even if you're a monk, you still have to go out begging for your food. You need, I mean, I met a monk in the Himalayas who lived in a hole in the ground. And I said, why are you living in a hole in the ground? And there is a perfectly good cave just up there. And he said, yes, but there is a bear in the cave and he's a kind of a bully. So, so even the monk has, a occupancy problem. You really can't run away from the world and its problems. Even if you do run away to the high Himalayas or some deep forests, you'll find problems there too. So how can you be spiritual here and now? How can you be enlightened here and now? That's the theme of the book. And it's an amazing, amazing book. Right off, the big problem with the book is that it's a big book. If you go to the original book, the Yoga Vasistha, it's 30,000 plus verses in the original Sanskrit. It's huge. There are people who have read through it and who are scholars in Yoga Vasistha. I know some of them. I know one who had read through it multiple times and had translated it supposedly more than once. So that's there. You can do it. I myself, I must be upfront. I haven't read through the whole book. I have read through it here and there for inspiration. Also, not all of it is, non-dual philosophy. There, it's full of the most amazing stories. I hope one day Hollywood gets hold of some of those stories and makes movies. It'll be like the best science fiction ever. Time travel and stuff like that, multiple identities. Amazing stories, all with a philosophical point. But luckily for us, few centuries ago, an unknown monk, we know it was a monk, but we don't know who exactly it was, condensed the Yoga Vasistha, the 30,000 verses, into just over 200 verses in a collection called the Yoga Vasistha Sara, the essence of Yoga Vasistha. So in about 10 chapters, 200 plus verses, which contains the essence of the teaching. So that is a book I was introduced to by a senior monk nearly 25 years ago. But that book was in Bengali translation from the Sanskrit, with lots of notes and lots of good information on non-dual Vedanta. Now we have finally, in the last few years, a very nice translation in English. This is the book I'm holding right now. It's called The Nectar of Supreme Knowledge, translated by Swami Sarvapriyananda. He is the head of the monastery, our Vedanta monastery in Hollywood, in the Vedanta Society of Southern California. He has done us a great favor by translating that book, not the original big book, the essence of Yoga Vasistha, and he's called it Nectar of Supreme Knowledge. So now we have this book, if anybody is interested. Just a little anecdote of another connection I have with the Yoga Vasistha. In my time in the Himalayas, I met this remarkable monk who lived in the hut next to the hut where I was living. His name was Brahma Chaitanya. And I'm sure many of us have seen the movie The Lord of the Rings. And Tolkien, I remember reading him as a kid. And at that time itself, I thought it would be wonderful if somebody made a movie out of it. And they did, and very nice movies too. Now, in the movie, if you remember Gandalf the magician with the white robe and the long beard and the long white hair, exactly like that. This Brahma Chaitanya was exactly like that. If anything, his beard and his hair were longer, and he had to tie it up in little bundles and keep it here. Now, he lived in the hut next to mine, and I'm talking, this is about 2004. What he did for spiritual practice was all day long, from the time sun rises above the valley, when you get some warmth there, he would sit on a wooden bench and he would read the Yoga Vasistha, the original Sanskrit book with 30,000 verses. He would read that and translate into English. He was a highly educated man. He was actually an engineer by training. His English was good. He would translate it into English, not for publication. And that was very interesting. He said, just for keeping my mind there. And he would do it all day long, except for the time when the two of us would go for begging for our food, which sounds more arduous than it actually was. You just go to an ashram where they feed the monks. So it was very pleasant, actually. And we would come back. And again, he would get down to his translation until it became too dark or cold when he would go into his cottage. And this is how he lived, from what I've heard, for about 40 years before he passed. So here's this man who was translating the Yoga Vasistha. It was his spiritual practice all day long to read and think and translate. All right. This book, the first verse of the first chapter, I think Google is doing a great job of, Zoom is doing a great job of blanking it out. Doesn't matter. I'll read it out. The first verse, it's a beautiful, beautiful verse. It goes to the heart of non-dual Vedanta. I will just read it, translate it, and walk us through it, and then open up for questions. Just walk with me. The original Sanskrit, don't be scared. I'm going to translate every bit of it, but it's beautiful to hear the original Sanskrit. Dikkaladyanavachinna ananta chinmatra murtaye swanubhuti kamanaya Nama Shantaya Tejase. Very beautiful verse. Let me translate the Sanskrit. I salute that serene radiance. Nama Shantaya Tejase. What is that serene radiance? Chinmatra Murtaye, whose form is pure consciousness alone. Consciousness alone. Chit, consciousness, matra, only, murti, form. Form, it's formless, so it is pure consciousness alone. What is its further nature? Ananta, limitless. What do you mean limitless? Diggala Dyanavachinna, not limited by time, space, etc. And we'll come to that, etc. So time, space, I'm giving a literal translation. Time, space, etc., not limited. What's the proof of this claim? Swanubhuti ekamanaya. One's own experience is the only proof of this. So now, let me put it all together. Salutations to that serene radiance, Namah Shantaya Tejase. Salutations to that which is pure consciousness, Namah Chinmatra Murtaye. Salutations to that which is limitless, Namah Anantaya. Salutations to that which is not limited by time, space, and object, or time, space, etc. Diggala Dhyanavachinnaya Namah. Salutations to that whose only proof is one's every experience. Swanubhuti ekamanaya. All right. I mean, I find it thrilling, this verse. It goes to the heart of the teaching of non-dual Vedanta. It lyrically, in sublime way, it points, and it's pointing to this extraordinary truth. And the claim is even more extraordinary, that this truth, what we just talked about, It's you, it's me, it's us. That we are that serene radiance which they are saluting, that we are that limitless consciousness, immortal consciousness, not limited by time, space, etc. That we are being revealed in every experience actually. So now we'll just take a deep dive into this verse, and then come back up for air, and then we'll see the question answers and see what we make of it. First, I salute that which is pure consciousness, Chinmatra Murti. All right. Now, immediately we are invited to notice that we are conscious, we are aware. When are we aware? When we are looking right now, we are seeing, we are aware. What we are seeing is different. We are seeing many things, colors, shapes, people, animals, places, but we are aware. It's the same awareness which experiences seeing various things. Push it further. When we are hearing, we hear so many things. Right now, we are hearing the voice of the speaker. And we hear music, we hear noise, so many things we hear. But in whatever we are hearing, we are aware. And now let me point out, that awareness, that consciousness, which is experiencing varied seeing, is exactly the same consciousness which is experiencing hearing. Please check for yourself. This simple fact. Eyes open, I am looking. Now let me become aware that I am aware. Yes, I am aware. Eyes closed, I'm just hearing. Yes, I am hearing. And I'm aware when I'm hearing. And isn't this awareness exactly the same awareness which a moment ago was seeing? Yes. So the awareness is the same whether you are hearing or seeing, or smelling, or touching, or tasting. So in all our conscious experiences, sensory experiences, in the five senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, these are all varied. They come and go. They arise and subside. But the awareness is constant. There is one awareness which lights up all these experiences. Check for yourself, as it says, Swanubhuti Ekamanaya. Check in your own experience. Is it so? Going further, it is that same awareness in all our inner thoughts, when we think, when we remember, when we enjoy, when we suffer, when we desire, when we love, when we hate. It is the same awareness. That awareness which is seeing now is the same awareness which gives me the experience of loving or hating or enjoying or suffering. It's the same awareness. So in all our inner experiences, our first-person experiences, our mental life, our inner psychological life is lit up by the same awareness. Come back to the world of activity. We walk, we talk, we grasp, we work in computers and so on and so forth. In every one of these experiences, I'm aware, I'm conscious. It is the same consciousness which lights up my sensory experiences, the same consciousness which lights up my inner psychological life, the same consciousness which lights up the bodily activity, action. It is the same consciousness which lights up my emotions. If I'm feeling great, if I'm feeling down and depressed, I'm still aware. Without awareness, there would be no feeling great or feeling down or depressed. Feeling elated, feeling bored or curious. All of these, feeling absolutely exhausted, sick, I don't like anything at all, or feeling on top of the world, all of that is lit up by the same light of awareness. Same awareness. So there is this one awareness lighting up our sensory experiences, motor experiences, inner psychological life of thoughts, intellectual life, our creative life, our memories, our likes and desires, our feelings, emotions. It is that one light which lights up our waking, our dreams. And indeed, the claim is in deep sleep, when somebody might say, "Oh, that's fine," but in deep, when you fall asleep, when you're under general anesthesia, lights out. Where is that awareness anymore? Vedanta would make the remarkable claim, which I'm not going to defend here, because it's profound and takes a lot of argument, will take us out of our subject, I mean, out of our main path. But the Vedanta makes the remarkable claim that even in deep sleep, even in general anesthesia, awareness is there. It's just that in deep sleep or general anesthesia, excuse me, there is nothing to be aware of. Let me illustrate with the example of light. So I have a big light here lighting up my face. And in the space between my face and the light is there, but you can't see the light visibly manifested until I do this. Note, my hand is shining in the light. If I take off my hand from here, then the space where my hand used to be does not seem to be lit up. It's only when I put my hand up there, then it shines, you see, it shines in that light. Sorry. Now, the claim is that awareness is like that. It becomes manifest, it becomes obvious when there's something to be aware of. But just because you've removed the objects of awareness, physical objects, sensory objects, actions, thoughts, feelings, memories, shut it all down in deep sleep, in anesthesia, does not mean that awareness has disappeared. There's just nothing to be aware of. It's like the sunlight streaming through the darkness of space. It's full of light. It's only when something like a satellite goes through it or a comet goes through it, you see the tail of the comet blazing forth in a glorious display. Does the comet have its own internal lighting? Not at all. It's just reflecting sunlight, which means when the comet was not there, it was just empty space, looked black, looked dark, and yet it was actually full of light because there was nothing to reflect that light off, so you didn't see it. Anyway, not to belabor the point is that even when one might think there is no awareness or consciousness, Vedanta claims there is. That it's just that there's no object to be conscious. That's why it feels like no consciousness. All right. This constant light is what is called here Chinmatra Murti, consciousness alone. The Upanishads try to illustrate this with the example of light. So, but the definition in the Upanishads, in Vedanta, the definition of light is if something is darkness, is in darkness, that which reveals it is light. If something is unknown, that which reveals it is light. So in physical darkness, something is there, you switch on a light, of course that's light because it revealed what was not seen earlier. But also, person is hiding and says, hey, I am here, now you know that person is there. So his speech is also revelation. Sometimes speech reveals. So when you're attending a class and the teacher tells you many things that we did not know earlier, now we know. So the speech is the light by which that which we did not know was revealed. So it goes like this. The Upanishads approach it like this. The sun is the light of the world. Everything is lit up because of the sun. And you don't need another sun to light up the sun. The sun shines by itself. But not quite. If our eyes are not open, the sun wouldn't shine for us. I mean, it wouldn't do its job for us. If you close our eyes, no light. So the eyes are the light of that physical external light. It's because of that we become aware. Eyes reveal that physical light. So eyes are the light of the sunlight also. The mind is the light of the eyes. Because unless we are attentive to what we are seeing, we won't see it, we won't experience it. So the mind is that which reveals what the eyes, ears, nose, skin, tongue, they bring. The information is brought to the mind. The attention of the mind is what reveals that. So the mind is the light of the senses. And the light of the mind is consciousness or awareness. And Vedanta claims awareness or consciousness does not have a further light of its own, because it's what the claim is, it is self-luminous. The self-luminosity of consciousness is a big point in Vedanta. One of the most beautiful Upanishads, two Upanishads in fact, two or three Upanishads have this verse. Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. That shining, everything else shines. By its light, everything here is lit up. That shining, consciousness shining. Everything else shines means first the mind is lit up. We are aware of thoughts, emotions, feelings, memories, desires, understanding, or the lack thereof. We become aware of it. And then the mind shining, our senses are lit up. Now that same awareness flowing through the mind becomes the different modalities of the senses: visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, tactile, 5 ways of same awareness, now as if refracted into 5 modalities. So that shining, everything else shines after it. By its light, everything here is lit up. The world is revealed to us. Vedanta claims you are that. So you shining, everything here is lit up. By your light, everything here shines. This is the meaning of Chinmatra Murti, consciousness alone. Now, you still have the feeling that, all right, so is this consciousness, but isn't it this consciousness is in one body, here in this person. Here is, I'm a person, and you're telling me that I'm awareness. There's this consciousness which is aware of the body, of the mind, of the senses, and through the body, mind, senses, aware of the world. But isn't it limited to this one body, mind, one personality? So there are so many people. Right here in this meeting, we have 58 people. So aren't there, apart from me, aren't there 57 other consciousnesses here? Each body has its own light, own consciousness. Is that true? And also, bigger question. So I am consciousness, but I'm aware, but I'm aware of things. In the philosophy of mind, this is called intentionality. You think or you're aware, but you're always aware of things. You're thinking of things. You're sensing, but you're sensing something. So there are objects. There are objects. There is the world, the vast universe. There is this very body. There are, in fact, my senses. They're all objects because I'm aware of them. There are subtle objects like my thoughts, my ideas, my feelings, my desires. They're also objects. A philosopher, Professor Arindam Chakravarti, brilliant philosopher. He actually studied at Oxford University, and he was a student of one of the most famous analytic philosophers of the 20th century, Sir Peter Strawson. So, and he's equally well versed in in Indian philosophy also, and he's away with words. So he defines an object. He says, "What's an object? An object is anything that objects to your consciousness." So think of awareness or consciousness as a field, like a light. And then it shines upon stuff. It goes out and it runs up against a table or a chair or a dog or the color blue. And then you become aware of those things. They're like objections, as if they resist consciousness, and then you become aware of them. An object is something that objects to your consciousness. So what are these objects in relation to consciousness? So there are big questions. How many consciousnesses are there? That's one big question. We sort of intuitively feel each one of us is conscious. So each one of us clearly has different bodies, different brains, different minds too, because we have different personalities. So wouldn't it be natural to presuppose that we have different consciousnesses also? That's one big question. The second, even more profound question would be, consciousness is aware of objects, or you're aware of objects. What's the relationship between consciousness and objects? Are they two different things in which we have a duality, a strict duality? Or did consciousness, we'll dive into that later. What's the relationship between consciousness and objects? All of that is answered in the word Ananta, which means limitless. Ananta, limitless. This consciousness is actually limitless. Limitless means there is nothing other than it, nothing that constitutes a limit to it. To explain the word limitless, there is a phrase, Dikkaladi Anavachinna, not limited by time, space, etc. Time, space, etc. Literally, it is the directions and time, etc. But it means time, space, etc. What does it, time, space, etc. mean? The claim here is this consciousness is not limited by time. Limited by time means something is born. Before that, it didn't exist. And then it exists, lives for a while, then it dies, and after which it does not exist. This is the time limit. It starts and it ends, like this class, like this talk, like a life, born and person dies, like any object, created and destroyed. So there are time limits. There's a slice of time in which it exists, and before that and after that, it does not exist. And here is the remarkable claim that consciousness is not limited by time. In fact, the claim, the first implication would be there is no time in which this consciousness was not existing. There's no time in which this consciousness not existing came to exist. And there's no time in which this consciousness existing will one day disappear and then not exist again. So this is the claim, and which makes the implication is that consciousness is eternal. We could argue it out, and it will take a long time, but one might throw questions like, well, what happens when you die? The brain is dead, the brain is producing consciousness, brain dies, and therefore there's no consciousness. And then that would lead us to the hard problem of consciousness. Does the brain produce consciousness? Is consciousness being channeled by the body mind, or is it being, can you reduce consciousness to a physical basis? Reductionism, materialistic reductionism, huge question. That's what is being challenged nowadays. There are multiple new approaches which are not necessarily based in ancient philosophy. They're coming through neuroscience, coming through philosophy, modern philosophy of mind, where we can go into that later. But the takeaway from this point is Ananta, limitless, means it's not limited by time. Not limited by time, implication, it is consciousness is eternal. Further, deeper. When we hear the word eternal, you get the feeling of something which lasts for a really, really long time. But this is not what is meant. What is meant here is even time is an appearance in consciousness, and therefore consciousness is not limited by time. Consciousness itself, it manifests time. Time appears in consciousness. So time is not something external to consciousness which can limit consciousness. Rather, consciousness is the theater stage on which time comes and plays its part. Therefore, time does not limit consciousness. Next, space. Again, the claim is, our general idea is we are tiny, tiny beings, and consciousness is just a flicker of light in eons of darkness. There's oceans of darkness in space and time, and somewhere in this little corner, I have come alive now, this body, and this body is producing a very delicate flame of consciousness, very soon to be snuffed out. Consciousness will be snuffed out, life will be snuffed out, that's it, I'm finished. This is our perspective. This is what we think, our modern mainstream materialist perspective. All spiritual traditions of the world, without exception, dispute this. They dispute that, at the minimum, that everything comes to an end at the death. They dispute it. Nothing can be a religious or spiritual tradition which says that at death everything is finished. So we are not reducible entirely to matter. Vedanta takes just the opposite perspective. We are not a tiny little being in the vastness of time and space. Rather, Vedanta says space is revealed to consciousness. Tiny bit of it here and the rest of it as unknown space, but it is revealed. Where else do you see space? In consciousness only. And Vedanta makes the remarkable claim that, like time, space is also an appearance in consciousness. Let me give an example, the famous dream paradigm in Vedanta. In our dreams, when we fall asleep and we forget that we are sleeping, a world of dreams is projected. And we exist in that world of dreams too. We are projected into it. We are part of a dream. And we think it's the waking world. We don't even doubt it unless you are lucid dreaming. We don't doubt it. We think it's part of the normal world. Things are happening there. Now notice something curious about the dream world. There is a tiny space in the dream world which we are aware of, our immediate environments, just like a waking world. Whatever we can see, hear, people around us, the locality, that's what we are aware of. And just like normal life. And we have this intuition that there is obviously a vast world out there which we are not aware of at present, but we could be. If I walked there or flew there or went on a spaceship and saw it, there is a universe around us. We feel an infinite, a vast universe surrounds us. But now here's the fun part of it. When I wake up, I'll realize that entire world that I saw, the known part of it and the so-called vast unknown part of it. The whole thing was a projection, a part of the dream projected by my mind. There was nowhere in that dream space where the dreaming mind was not. Whether you saw it and experienced that little space around you, of course, the dreaming mind was there projecting it, but also the so-called vast unknown around you. That also was being projected by the dreaming mind as the vast unknown. And indeed, the person in the dream, you, the individual in the dream, the character in the dream, that too was being projected by the dreaming mind. Here, the claim is that analogously, it is in this one global consciousness that all of space and time are projected. We see only a slice of it because we are streaming ourselves through one little body. But it is the same consciousness, according to Vedanta, which is shining through everybody. Our bodies are different, our minds are different, but it is one consciousness shining through all. And in that one consciousness, all of time and space are appearing and playing around and disappearing. And therefore, unlimited by time and space. Unlimited by time and space. Not limited by time, therefore consciousness is eternal. Not limited by space, consciousness is all-pervasive or omnipresent. Forcing it further, it's not even true to say consciousness is eternal, consciousness is all-pervasive. You see, it's only when we accept the reality of time, then we are forced to say consciousness is eternal, because otherwise the common sense assumption is consciousness is non-eternal. It's born and it dies. Vedanta claims, on the contrary, consciousness is eternal. But more, deeper, consciousness is not even eternal. The concept of eternality, the concept of time, the experience of time itself is an appearance in consciousness. It is even ultimately not true to say consciousness is all-pervasive. It's not like there is space and consciousness somehow like incense, sort of floats around and pervades space. No, no, no. Rather, space itself is an appearance in consciousness. It's only by accepting the reality of space do we claim that pure consciousness is all-pervasive. It is only by accepting the reality of time that we claim consciousness is eternal. This is something else called an object. What about all this stuff which seems to be an object to consciousness? I am aware it is true, but there is so much that I'm aware of. What's all that? This idea, it's hidden in the word etc. Tikkal adi. The adi word in Sanskrit means etc. Etc. means object. Object means everything that is we experience in consciousness. Whatever we experience or can be experienced in consciousness is an object to consciousness. And here Vedanta surpasses itself and says, even the object is an appearance in consciousness. It appears to consciousness, it appears in consciousness, and it is nothing other than consciousness. It is consciousness appearing to itself with the name and form of an object. Just like you, the dreamer, go into your own dream and you see people and places and animals and sky and earth. But all that you see and experience in your dream is nothing but you appearing to yourself, the dreamer appearing to itself as all of these, living and non-living, as the elements, as sky and space and water and whatnot. Similarly, the claim is a thoroughgoing non-duality, that consciousness and object are not two realities. It is not even one reality. It is consciousness alone appearing to itself as a second, as an object. Therefore, the truth of consciousness is that it is non-dual. It is not two, while appearing to itself as 2 and 3 and 4 and many and many and many. In the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, in Sanskrit, avibhaktam cha bhuteshu vibhaktam iva cha sthitam. Undivided in all beings, I appear as if divided. I appear as if divided. Consciousness by itself is undivided. I'm reminded of one of those physicists. They loved Vedanta, by the way. Oppenheimer did. He's the one who quoted the Gita when he saw the first explosion of the atom bomb in the Manhattan Project. He always carried a copy of the Gita with him. He called it the most beautiful, the most sublime philosophical song in any known tongue. That's a quote from Oppenheimer. And his colleagues were equally enthusiastic about Vedanta. Heisenberg, and Schrödinger. Schrödinger actually said consciousness is that singular of which there is no plural. And here is the ancient Vedantic arguments for it. So consciousness is a singular, and everything that appears to it is nothing other than consciousness. There are not many consciousnesses, and even the objects which appear as non-conscious objects are also actually nothing other than consciousness. There are arguments for this. I can supply some of them for your consideration afterwards, but let me just um, move ahead. What's the proof of all this? It says, Swanubhuti ekamanaya. Very beautiful. It says, your own experience is the proof of it all. What does it mean? When we say we want a proof of something, we want to say, I want to see it, or hear it, or smell it, or taste it, or touch it, or use my instruments to demonstrate it to me, or use my scientific understanding or mathematics to prove it to me. Now, Vedanta says, notice, all of this proof is a proof to consciousness. All of it is proved to consciousness. You see, you, the conscious being, you accept the proof of XYZ object through some method of proof. So ultimately, all proofs depend on consciousness. Vedanta says consciousness is self-proved. It is self-luminous. It reveals itself. It lights up everything else, and it is self-revealing. And they say that it is at the heart of every experience. One thing that you can never say is, I am not aware. I'm not aware of X, Y, Z. That's true. You can say it all the time. But I'm not aware. Just to say it, you have to be aware. And correspondingly, another thing you can never say, it's actually the same thing. I do not exist. You can't say it. This is at the heart of Descartes' famous cogito ergo sum. He says we can doubt everything except our own existence. Why can't we doubt our own existence? Here is the interesting thing. He put it in the language of thought. I think, therefore I am. But recently, David Chalmers, in his book Reality Plus, he says he doesn't have to say I think, therefore I am. I walk, therefore I am. I eat, therefore I am. I dream, therefore I am. Any conscious experience proves my own existence. As what? As consciousness. That I am this conscious experiencing being is proved just by any experience. And the Upanishads go on to make this remarkable claim. The consciousness in itself is not an object. It sounds incredibly abstract, incredibly subtle, which it is, and yet it is not. It's also at the same time utterly obvious. One of the Upanishads, the Kena Upanishad says, Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hivindate. When you realize this truth, the Atman, Brahman, this non-dual reality, in every experience, in every seeing, in every hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, in every imagination, even in the act of denying and saying, all this is nonsense, you have just proved it right. When this becomes clear to you, that every experience is telling you you are limitless consciousness, then you are enlightened. It's a bit like if I say the stuff that I see, how do I know these things are there? Well, because I see them. That's the proof of the existence of the computer, of the book. I see it, therefore it exists. I see the cloth, therefore it exists. I do not see an elephant in the room, therefore there is no elephant in the room. If there were an elephant in the room, I would see it. So seeing is the proof of existence. Now, what is the proof that I have eyes? I can't see my eyes. If seeing is the proof of existence, I can't prove it. I can't see my eyes. You might say, Swami, can you see your own picture in the computer? And say, well, that's a picture. There's a picture of my eyes. My eyes cannot see themselves directly the way the eyes are seeing the book. They're seeing the book like this. My eyes can't see themselves directly. And it's a sort of commonly understood thing in philosophy. Self-reflexivity is not allowed. In grammar, subject and the object cannot be the same thing, and so on. In common sense also, a knife doesn't cut itself. So the question remains, how do I know that I have eyes? If the proof of something is the seeing of it, then I can't see my eyes. How do I know that I have got eyes? Well, the answer would be very simple. The very fact that you are seeing shows that you have got eyes. Seeing what? Seeing anything. Seeing anything is the proof that you have eyes, eyes which are open and functioning. We don't even doubt it. We don't need to rush to the mirror and see if my eyes are still there. Just by seeing something, I know my eyes are still there. Similarly, uh, Vedanta says it is consciousness. The proof of this is every experience that we have. Whatever experience, whether you see, hear, smell, taste, love, hate, enjoy, suffer, wake, dream, sleep, every experience, whether you know stuff or you're aware that I do not know stuff, all of that is shining in consciousness, and therefore you are this limitless consciousness. Let us put it together. Now we have got the idea. This consciousness, this serene radiance, the final claim, of course, is you are it. The great Vedantic dictum, Tat Tvamasi. You are that. Tat Tvamasi. So when I'm going to chant this, I'm going to talk about it as it is said in the verse, and then give the implication that you are this. Namah Shantaya Tejase. Salutations to that serene radiance. Why serene radiance? It is serene because it is free of all trouble. This is the important thing. As the body will age. If you are in America, you will have fads of gluten-free and this yoga and this diet and that, all very good, all helpful, but still the body is going to get old. Still the body is going to get sick, and still the body is going to die. These are fundamental truths. Anything that's produced will be destroyed. Anything that's born will die. As bodies, we are very vulnerable. A tiny little COVID can wipe us out. As minds, we are even more vulnerable. Swami Vivekananda said, slave to a good word, slave to a bad word. Our minds are so delicate. A little insult, can't forget it for whole life. It rankles. Our minds are so delicate. Happy this moment, unhappy the next. Suicidal this moment. I read one article, Memoirs of Darkness, William Styron. He was suicidal. And at one point, he tried to commit suicide, but luckily he saved. And he says, when I look back, I'm shocked. What was really there to commit suicide about? And then he says, but at that moment, it seemed there was no other way except killing myself. That's the mind. Tremendously variable, tremendously vulnerable. But as pure consciousness, as awareness, the ever-shining, ever-present, limitless awareness which shines through all beings, as is indeed all beings. It is the all beings. That limitless awareness is not vulnerable. It's perfectly secure. The great philosopher Wittgenstein, who was there in your very country, in Cambridge, he would say religion is the search for perfect security. And here he says you can find it. It's already there. It's already yours. But as pure consciousness, not as the body, not as the mind. As pure consciousness, living through the body and mind is still perfectly secure. Because let the body go, you will be fine. So, Shantaya, it is free of all problems. Tejase, that radiance, that serene radiance. Namah Chinmatra Murtaye. Salutations to that which is consciousness alone. This is what we analyzed. We understand it now. Namah Anantaya. Salutations to that consciousness which is limitless. What do you mean limitless? Namah Dikkaladi Anavacchinnaya. That which is not limited by time and therefore eternal. That which is not limited in space and therefore all pervasive. That which is not limited by any object and therefore non-dual. To that eternal, all-pervasive, non-dual consciousness, salutations. Tvanubhuti ekamanaya. The very experience of life, to the enlightened one, every experience of life is proving this claim. Our life itself is standing testimony all the time in our face. I love that beautiful Buddhist phrase, Tibetan Buddhist, which says, on the primordial ground of being, there is the magical display of samsara and nirvana. If you know that primordial ground of being, if you don't know it, it will appear to you as samsara, as our world, our struggles, life and death. If you know it, that same ground will appear to you now as nirvana. It is that same non-dual reality. Here it is called the serene radiance. Let me chant the verse once more and we'll take questions. दिक्कालाद्यनवच्छिन्ना अनन्तचिन्मात्रमूर्तये स्वानुभूत्येकमानाय नमः शान्ताय तेजसे. Thank you so much.